Yesterday, Thomas Massie came out and said that he has filed with the Federal Election Commission for the 2028 House race. And that allows him to raise funds to continue all of his, fundraising and other political activities and things to allow him to run for a potential federal office. And he says he hasn't made a final decision about which office to run for, but I would really like to see him make a run for the president. And I would really like to see him make a run for president as an independent candidate. And I know that's a big challenge. Like, to go against the Republican and Democratic Party as an independent would be really difficult. I remember hearing Ron Paul talk about it in years past, that one of the reasons that he stayed within the Republican Party was because it just made it easier. And to run as an independent, you just don't have that, basically device, that machine to kind of help you campaign and to get into office. And it's just being in one of those parties really helps out. But I think the two-party system is just so done, or at least maybe that's just, I'm being hopeful, because I can't stand the Republicans, I can't stand the Democrats. I've really gotten to where I can't stand the Republicans even more, because they're the ones that claim to be advocates of the free market and claim to be advocates of the Constitution, and then they just, basically backstab anybody that really pushes for that, like we saw last week in the primary between Thomas Massie and Trump's little puppet. But, I really think there is a lot of energy behind Thomas Massie. Like, if you watched his concession speech last week, it was great. I mean, it was very energetic. You wouldn't have thought you were watching, the speech of the loser of the election. It was just, he came out, he was funny, he was throwing jabs.
I would have come out sooner, but I had to call my opponent and concede, and it took a while to find Ed Galrein in Tel Aviv.
He was, and the crowd was really amped up, and they're, chanting, wanting him to run for president. He was kind of messing with them. They're chanting 2028, and he's like, what's in 2028? You want me to run for Congress again? But I really do. I really like Thomas Massie, and he really is kind of, this new generation's Ron Paul. And, I just think that's what we need to get behind. I've seen people also mocking that idea about Thomas Massie running. They're laughing. They're like, he couldn't even win a primary. Well, the thing is, he has won numerous primaries and multiple congressional elections. So he has won. The problem was you had just a massive attack against him by Miriam Adelson, AIPAC, the Republican Jewish Coalition, and that's not conspiracy theory. I mean, John Podhoretz was out, bragging about it openly. But here's the thing. You really turned off a lot of Republicans that did support Thomas Massie and Donald Trump, because this kind of opened up some people's eyes. And I know some of them, because I've been having these disagreements with them about Trump since they got in, and this election really kind of made them say, like, wow, I'm really surprised that they went against Thomas Massie, because they liked Thomas Massie. And then to see Thomas Massie get attacked, that really kind of, it was kind of like one of those aha moments for them regarding the Republican Party. But you talk about somebody that could put together a coalition for 2028 that could really bring together independents, people from the Democratic Party, people from the Republican Party. I think Thomas Massie could definitely be a serious candidate in 2028. And I saw where Ro Khanna from the Democratic Party came out, and he was kind of like extending an olive branch to Thomas Massie, saying like, hey, come join up with the populist Democrats. And I would just, again, I don't like the parties. I would really like to see it end. And guess what? If he runs as a third party and still doesn't win and just plays spoiler to one of them, just to see them get mad about it would be hilarious, especially the Republicans, with the way that party's treated him. I mean, with Donald Trump's betrayal of his entire base, I mean, you could see him potentially run, as the libertarian candidate, but that party's got, I've gotten to where I almost think that party's completely co-opted just as much as the Republicans or Democrats. Like the candidate that they picked in 2024, he was almost, more about being like woke and a bunch of like, trans type issues and stuff. And here's the thing, like libertarians, we don't care about your social life. Like, look, like we're not anti-gay, anti-trans, like we don't care, but that's not like a big, it's not like a really big important platform, or it used to not be. It's just kind of like it was more about, hey, look, the government should stay out of all of your social life, and we should be fiscally conservative, fiscally responsible. That's kind of what libertarianism was about. Um, Private property, free markets, those kind of things. And there's this huge open borders movement now within the Libertarian Party. And libertarians, at least when I got into it, and at least my position is we're not for open borders, because that's one of the basic foundations of private property, right? You got property lines, those are borders. So as a country, you definitely need borders, because where does the point where you begin to be responsible for, taking care of and governing over start and end? It's not, libertarianism isn't anarchism. I could see being an anarchist and being an open borders advocate. That makes sense. But libertarians believe in small, limited government, not zero government. So, but that's it. And whatever office Thomas Massie does decide to run for, if he does, I will definitely support his campaign and try to contribute to it in any way. Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment.